just like in the movies.
Welcome to SuperWonder Legacy. I am Jared. I'm here with Britt. What's up, Britt?
Hello, hello.
And all right. So let me tell you all a story. I used to be a big fan of the Flashpoint animated movie. And I was for a long time until I bought the omnibus for the entire storyline. Now, this includes the Flashpoint miniseries and all of the tie-in, like all the special series that's like showing all the Flashpoint stuff. So obviously I was interested. How's the Wonder Woman thing work? All right. This is one of the many occasions where a book adapts something and completely butchers it. Because, actually, you know what, Britt? How does the movie portray Wonder Woman?
Hold on.
Britt is preparing for a rant.
Wait, you put me on the spot. I forgot that we were live and recording. A bloodthirsty, home-wrecking warrior.
Yes, exactly. Now, okay, as time passed, so I remember reading this, going thinking that's the way Wonder Woman was. If I could describe the tonal whiplash that I experienced reading those stories, so here's the thing. In this, hey, what's up, NJ and Cameron? In this, all right. So, of course, it's Jeff Johns, but okay. Not even in the main mini-series is Wonder Woman portrayed as the bloodthirsty warrior that she would be later portrayed. And I think this started the whole Wonder Woman as a aggressive evil warrior. Because this thing, okay, I'm trying to figure out a way to say this without, like, blasting, because I'm going to. So, what happens in this storyline is, all right, so Wonder Woman is not like the aggressive warrior. What she is a individual manipulated into going to war under false pretenses. That is basically the gist of the story. Am I right, Britt?
Right.
Yeah. So here's the thing. All right. Now here's the idea. All right. So with Flashpoint, what Flashpoint was, actually, you know what? I'll just go ahead and move on here. Flashpoint was the series. It was originally just supposed to be a Flash story. It wasn't supposed to reboot or lead into the new 52. But what happened was they wanted a reboot already. And they were like, okay, Jeff's doing a time travel story with the Flash. Why don't we just use that? He comes, because originally what's supposed to happen is at the end of Flashpoint, it was just supposed to go back to normal. But in this, we would later find out it's Dr. Manhattan, but something interfered and then things changed. But anyway, in this, Barry Allen wakes up in a different timeline where there apparently is no Superman. Aquaman and Wonder Woman are at war. Bruce died and Thomas Wayne became Batman and Martha Wayne became the Joker, and lots of other really crazy divergences. And he doesn't have his powers, and his mother's alive. That's really key here. So he travels around, and then the reason why the omnibus is that big is because what they did was, in addition to the miniseries itself, they did like 3-issue, I think, minis for like a bunch of different series, like Deathstroke, Superman, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, and such, to explore like what the Flashpoint versions of these characters look like. And the key parts here, so actually, you know what? We'll start with the core themes of Flashpoint. It's grief and regret because of that. Barry saved his mother. That caused a ripple in the timeline and distortion that traveled throughout the universe. And then it's all about Flash being a hero. It's the actions have consequences and such. And it's like, and it deals with a lot of like moral ambiguity, particularly with Flashpoint Batman. and it's also has to deal with fate. So that's the basic foundation of Flashpoint. So we get to Wonder Woman. All right, here is the basic story of Wonder Woman according to the Flashpoint comics. So the story is, instead of Steve, isn't it kind of funny, Britt, that Steve Trevor plays no part in this?
Right. I mean, he's just, well, he is playing his part. Is to die.
Well, yeah, but in terms of getting Diana off the island.
That's true. But you know, in a twisted way,
Mm-hmm.
Johns would probably make that a point that, oh, she needs Steve to get her off the island so she can stay good or something like that.
That sounds like a little something a certain king would do.
King would do that too. It definitely, most definitely.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So here's the story according to the comics. All right. So Wonder Woman and Philippus are running across. And by the way, if you guys have any questions, just go ahead and drop them in chat. But Wonder Woman and Philippus are running across the sands of Themyscira, where Diana has stashed a boat because she wants to go explore the outside world. Pretty standard stuff. She leaves the island and is attacked by a kraken, and she is then saved by Arthur. And Arthur takes her to Atlantis, nurses her to health, and then the Amazons and Atlanteans, who are both secret to the world now, decide that, okay, so let's unite our kingdom so that when we inevitably reveal ourselves to the surface world, to the outside world, to man's world, what have you, we will do it from a position of strength. All right. Good stuff so far. So Wonder Woman and so it's decided that Diana and Arthur will unite their kingdoms in marriage. So they will marry. The movie got this more or less right. This is where it massively diverges. All right. So during the course of actually, you know what? Here we go. During the course of the wedding, the queen's sister, Penthesilea, and Orm, and I don't know if you noticed this, Britt, Artemis conspire to sabotage the wedding. They meant to throw a trident and kill Diana, but Hippolyta stepped in the way and it killed Hippolyta. And it looks like an Atlantean did it. So in issue 2, Diana, so now Britt, before I explain this, explain what happens to Mira in the Flashpoint movie.
She gets beheaded out of, really, because the whole twisted love triangle thing, you know, the love affair.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's not what happens in this. So What happens in this is the Atlanteans show up to Themyscira, yes, with military forces, but it's more of we're approaching from a position of strength, but we're trying to avoid a war. We don't want combat for this because they both recognize that if they went to war with each other, the world is going to suffer. So what happens is Orm and his conspirators sabotage the island, and then some rubble falls on Philippus and kills her. So then Arthur Arthur and Diana, actually the war technically starts, and then the island is sunk. Themyscira is sunk. While Themyscira is sinking, Mira engages Diana in combat, and Diana is constantly begging Mira, stop this. I don't want to have to kill you. You're basically like a sister to me. I don't want this war. But Mira won't stop. So Diana says, okay, then I have to end this war. And she takes the helmet off and puts it on there as a warning. The movie has the warning part, but doesn't do anything with the context. The warning here is, this is what war has cost us. And then the Amazons invade the UK and take over. So then we get to issue 3. Well, then it cuts into the story kind of vacillates into the story of Wonder Woman into different series, but it's like in another one, it's the way she discovers that Penthesilea is a traitor is she's fighting basically a UK superhero, and then she stumbles into a prison camp where Penthesilea had been using, and this was all in all series, Britt. This was discovered in the Lois Lane comic. This is why I had you read that for this show. So, what you discover is Penthesilea had prison camps. She was using the the purple ray to essentially re-educate the men. Diana discovers this and goes, I gave no order for this. I had no idea this was going on. So she frees them, goes and discovers Penthesilea and Orm kissing. So obviously she's like, what? And then immediately she goes to Arthur on his ship and goes, Arthur, I know there's no love lost between us, but we are being manipulated. You need to stop this. We need to stop this war because we're destroying the world. And this is all started from a lie. Maybe she shouldn't have shown up on the ship wearing Mira's helmet. But the point is, it's like routinely, as opposed to being the warmonger that the movie portrays her as, routinely, Diana says, does everything she can to stop the war, to the point where when they're fighting in that big splash page of the Flashpoint miniseries, she is telling Arthur, stop this, we're being manipulated. And most of what she does in this is out of self-defense. The Steve Trevor stuff is like, well, even then, we don't see what happens to Steve in the movie. People assume that she kills him. Maybe she doesn't. Hey, what's up, Samir? So, going from an animated movie to the comic was a huge whiplash. I know, Cameron, right? I'm like, what the hell just happened? I'm thinking about this, and I'm like, gee, Oliva, I know you. Here's what pisses me off, Britt. You could say it's because that's like a lot of like material for them to put in an hour-and-a-half movie. That's fine. I would believe that if they had not devoted a middle point of the movie to a flashback explaining how the war started. I'm like, replace that with this.
If you simplify things, that doesn't mean just go off the wall, book wild with changing the character, like motivation and basically a 180 on the character. Though you can cut, and delete things out and still make it make sense, but that still doesn't give the excuse of why Diana is characterized the way she was.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, again, I get that you can't adapt everything, but there's a difference between adaptation and fundamentally changing the source material to fit your twisted story. And this is my problem, because it would be one thing if they weren't changing it to make Wonder Woman the villain, but the villains of the Flashpoint movie are Wonder Woman and the Reverse Flash of the movie. That's it. Those are the villains. And that's totally artificial. It's to the point. So, Britt, what does Diana do to Billy Batson in the animated movie?
She kills him.
Guess what she doesn't do in the comic?
She does not kill him.
Bingo! And the funny part about it is, like, a friend of mine gave like the most BS excuse I've ever heard. It could be that Amazon had a similar armor to Diana. I looked it up, and the armor looked nothing like Diana. All this is because this is one of the occasions that gives fuel to the fire that DC does not respect Wonder Woman. It is utterly disgusting.
Exactly.
And by Cameron says the fact that they kept everything else the same is kind of BS. Yeah, exactly. That's the other part. Besides this, it's pretty much the same thing. And I'm
yeah, go ahead. That is what they always do. They change certain things and it's always Diana's role. You can go back to, I mean, DCAU,
Hmm.
with the way, Bruce Timm and production, they didn't know how to characterize her, so they thought, oh, just turn her into a pig or turn her into a bat simp, and that'll make her interesting, instead of actually going through her story. I mean, they had her steal the Wonder Woman attire, and she didn't really have her powers, um I guess, activated until later on. So the
Oh, don't
lasso.
forget, Britt, they also had her get banished from her home island.
Exactly. And then you have DCAMU. Well, no, you have New Frontier, actually, that they gave Diana's most important, like, vital moment with Clark to Lois. Because of course they're jealous that Diana and Cal has that type of relationship within that. Then you have DCAMU changing to Death of Superman.
Oh
Um,
God, you want to talk about whiplash? God damn.
Yeah, and well, that's it. You have to have someone like Jim Craig to care about Diana, and then we will get Justice League Action or Tomorrowverse.
DC, give us the job. Britt and I will do it. But it's that is the sickening part of this. Oh, and so at least they explain in the comics. They see when they get into Arthur's like origin. So, Britt, how much of the Emperor Aquaman book did you read?
I'm gonna be honest, I skimmed through because I you already know that this was already giving me a headache. And
So I'm the
what
reason why you were sick. Is that what you're telling me?
No, so I was like, okay, so I watched the movie, and then I read Wonder Woman and the Furies, and then I skimmed through the actual main event of Flashpoint, and I was like, you know what? No, 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 no. So I did skim through Lois and the Resistance and everything else. I skimmed through it, but I did not actually in depth read them because, yeah, it ticked me off how Diana seemed like the only one that they changed drastically and made her out to be this villain. And then you have at the end of the animated movie, you're supposed to feel bad for Arthur. Like, he is the one that you feel remorse for because Diana is the one that was the warmonger. She was the one that was a homewrecker. She was temptress in a sense. And she she's the one that caused, massive amount of deaths more.
Oh, don't
And
forget, you actually forgot, by the way, an animated adaptation, Red Sun.
oh yeah, that well, you know, that's good to be
There's
forgotten.
too much
But
to bring up. I know. So here's Aquaman's origin in Flashpoint, and they actually explain why he's so evil really well. So the origin's the same to a certain point. So Atlanta still lands on the island on the lighthouse. She's brought in by Arthur's father. They have the kid. Atlanta is forcibly brought back to Atlantis, leaving Arthur and his father. But then the father's firstborn son is killed. So the Atlanteans go back up to the surface, kill Arthur's father, and bring him down. So the reason why Arthur's evil is because he was hardened by because he didn't have his father's like love and his mother's love in order to like soften him. So he grew up basically in a gladiator pit.
that's really, I mean, it does say a lot of your supporting characters and the parents and stuff, like with the Kents and all of that. However, it does make these characters feel codependent, and it feels like they really aren't the heroes that we think they are, only by being codependent.
Yeah, but it's like at least they gave a legitimate explanation. Yeah, with this, again, you're making the argument that Aquaman is the real villain because Wonder Woman routinely goes to him and says, "Look, look, look. Oh, did I mention that Wonder Woman even gets Orm and Penthesilea to confess on the radio? And is like, hey, yeah, we manipulated this. And then what happened is one of Arthur. So then Penthesilea and Orm also like launched depth charges at Arthur's fleet, and then one of Arthur's soldiers essentially. So you know how in the movie they had Captain Atom hostage, and that was like their nuke.
Why is Adam always the nuke?
He's not in the comic. In the comic, they kidnap Geoforce and use him to make earthquakes in order to sink continents. That's how the island sinks.
Well, this is dark.
I think the reason why they went with Captain Atom is because then they don't have to explain who the hell Geoforce is, because you get the general idea when it comes to Captain Atom. So that change, I wasn't that like, I didn't have that much of a problem. But it's like, then you get, it's like routinely it's this entire series just it's essentially what this is, Britt, with the animated movie. It's like you're in a hole and you're trying to dig your way out, but you're digging downward.
Exactly.
That's what this movie does. Right? NJ says, sadly, most casual fans only watch movies and not comics. This is why many see her as bloodthirsty warrior who loves to kill people and injustice forever. Yeah, exactly. That's a great point, NJ. Because it was kind of funny, Britt. The Injustice animated movie. This is why. So, Inside Baseball, everyone. This is technically part one of a 2-part episode series. Part 2 we'll do later, but it's like we're going to talk about adaptations that vary wildly, because the Injustice one actually was better because it makes Diana the hero. She even turns against Superman, the animated movie. And I'm like, they still take a shot at SuperWonder, but honestly, this is the time where I think it's appropriate to say, nope, don't do it. Anyway, with Injustice, the animated movie, this is why when people said, oh, the Injustice animated movie sucks, I go, actually, it's actually not that. It's actually better than the comic. Anyway.
I mean, that's a low bar, but okay.
It's a low bar. Trust me, Britt, when you see this, when you see the animated movie, that's one that I'm going to insist that you actually have to watch for that episode.
No, I already watched it and I'm not watching it again. No. No.
The Injustice animated movie? I'm not telling you to read the comics again.
I did watch the movie and I'm not watching it again. No.
Right. God damn it, Britt. Anyway, the whip, that's the reverse Flashpoint, because it's like it makes Wonder Woman technically a hero in that book. I'm like, what type of alternate timeline am I living in when Injustice is the better adaptation? What?
Again, that the bar is in the depths of hell, though.
Depths of hell is a word for it. Oh, you mean so the bar is being held by Tom King? Anyway, Cameron says also in the animated movie, Diana's cast is nowhere to be seen. Yeah, in the anime and in the comics, they do something really dope where all of the female superheroes in DC are Diana's Furies. And I'm like, that is honestly, when I was reading that, I was like, oh, that is honestly one of the coolest things you could have done. I mean, the Wonder Girls, it would have been nice to see them. But the fact that you took like Huntress, Hawkgirl, even Terra, and made them basically Wonder Woman's like shock troops, I'm like, it's all inventive. By the way, so Britt, you know what's kind of funny?
Mm-hmm.
What gender do you think the individuals who wrote the Wonder Woman series are?
Male.
Yeah, so anyone that says that men should only be allowed to write Wonder Woman,
Women.
BS. I had to say that. I had to. You know me, Britt. But so then we get the major downgrade. First off, and Britt, let's rant about this animation style, because it's like you know what's interesting? It's not as bad with the female characters, but the problem with the men is that they made them too like broad shoulders, so they literally have tiny heads.
I mean, Diana's still, I don't know what's going on with the with the face structure and
Mm-hmm.
and the tiny lips and stuff like that. But she's still kind of in certain ways, she's still like a very tall body, and a little bit like a linebacker, and then with a small head. They all look like linebackers with small heads. They really did.
Yeah.
And especially Superman. I mean, that, I don't know what that was. Like, he definitely got his head shrunk or something.
Well, he kind of looks like that in the comic, so it's like it's not necessarily that like different.
I mean, yeah, but still.
Yeah, exactly. But as my lovely assistant said at the beginning of this episode, Wonder Woman is depicted as the villain of Flashpoint, where she's a warmonger. She's
A
she
homewrecker.
homewrecker, exactly. She kills everything, including Steve, and she's also a raging misogynist. And I'm like, well, whatever the anti-male version of misogynist is. I just realized I'm like, she's anti-woman. That doesn't make sense. Anyway, it's like when she goes,
I mean,
we're
she
like,
is anti-woman with the fact that in the movie she had to kill Mira because she, wanted power and wanted to be with Arthur.
yeah, well, okay, that works. Thank you, Britt. Anyway, but it's like when they catch Steve Trevor. By the way, Britt, isn't it kind of funny how Flashpoint put Steve with Lois?
That's right.
And
Yeah.
they both ended up getting killed. Anyway, but yeah, spoiler alert, that's what happens to Lois in Flashpoint. Anyway, so with this, it's like, so they catch Steve Trevor, and she like wraps the lasso around his neck, and she goes, "Don't worry, he's just a man." And I go, I'm like, I get that this is a more brutal Wonder Woman, but she has no reason to be brutal. And thank you, Cameron, misandry is the word. She's like all of the Sandries, whatever that word is. She hates both genders. You're all equally worthless. And it's like the Amazons are straight up like brutal killers. And I go, I'm watching this and I go, some of them were in the comic. I'm not going to be like, hey, what's up, KHL? It's good to have you back, man. Some of the Amazons in the comic are like straight up evil, like Penthesilea. By the way, from a mythological standpoint, you know why it's interesting that Amazon was used?
Why is that?
Because the actual story of Penthesilea from Greek mythology is that it varies whether or not it's by accident or intentionally kills Hippolyta, and then is so like distraught that she needs to go on a war of like purification. So she goes to the Trojan War where she is killed by Achilles.
I mean, that's much more character depth than, oh, I just want to start a war and
It's
kill
actually kind of
people.
interesting. So Achilles runs her through with the sword. As she's dying, he takes off her helmet and they fall in love for that brief moment that she has alive.
Wow, that is a more horrific love story than Romeo and Juliet.
And before they die, they both say in another life.
I mean, that is definitely a Greek tragedy.
Yeah, I'm like, this is why I love these stories. So KHL is the perfect example of this. This movie made me hate Wonder Woman for like a month because of what she did to Billy, and I immediately forgot. Yeah, exactly. That is just a random Amazon in the book. That is the part that was like, that made me go F this. Because the minute you make Wonder Woman a child killer, then I'm like, I'm done. I was already pissed off with she's the villain, but when you do this, I'm like, no, absolutely not.
Right.
And then Cameron says she's the most gorgeous woman I've met until now. You mean? And then I face palmed at that because Diana would not be jealous about another woman. This was done on purpose. Yeah, exactly. They made Wonder Woman also jealous of Lois, and I go, that should be reversed, actually.
They always do that. I mean, Lois has been always jealous of Diana, but in order to make Lois, you know, to prop up Lois, they do the whole 180 thing. I mean, they do that in comics all the time. We have it with Rebirth. We have it with DCAMU, um, Immortal Beloved, even Phil Jimenez in Wonder Woman 170. And it feels like Diana is, as I say, always used as a mouthpiece.
Oh, yeah, yeah, exactly. And you wonder why I hate Lois. It's like I was telling this again because I took my family to see the Superman movie. And my mom turns to me and goes, Jared, why do you hate Lois so much? And I go, if you have to denigrate another character to prop up Lois, there's a problem with the Lois character. That's the reason why. If you have to tear down others in order to hold up someone, maybe there's something wrong with that person. Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong.
Exactly. Thank you. I'm always right on this channel. You know this. NJ says, as long as Lois exists as a character in DC, Dan will always be humiliated and belittled. Yes. Yes,
That's
exactly.
unfortunate. Yeah.
KHL says the only reason she killed Billy was because the writers wanted to emphasize she's an extremely horrific person, which in my opinion was really useless because she already packed up Mira. Yeah, I know you already did this. I'm like, we already but here's the thing, KHL, here's the difference. Because Mira attacked Diana first. In both versions of the story, Mira attacked Diana. But
Sure, but I mean, Diana still would not
she
do such a
wouldn't,
thing.
but it was still like you could make the argument self-defense. With this, she's killing a kid. So they're like, how do we make her really evil?
Exactly. That is what they tried to convey, and that has been the problem with these writers. They take the whole warrior thing literally, and it's like, no, that's not what Diana's warrior persona is. Um, she's not bloodthirsty. She's not going to kill. And honestly, I do blame Sacrifice for this.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what, Rucka, as much of a fan favorite writer he is, I'm sorry, but a lot of Diana's issues, some of her personality issues does stem from him.
God
Um,
damn, you always are taking the opportunity to bash Raka.
I, I will walk him like a dog. I will drag him for sure because he is Jared. Come on now, he put her in a psych ward, put her in a
She's
straitjacket
not
for no
wrong.
reason.
She's not
You know,
wrong.
he basically wanted to have her with this, like, oh, she has some darkness, in her, within her, some mental emotional wreckage or whatever, just for her to be friends or have this certain bond with Batman. He writes her in this dark manner, um that's very stiff, no personality. Yeah, he gave the ambassador, but he still made her stiff, very snooty. She gave this snooty princess vibe. So a combination of that plus Sacrifice, and his the thing about, even with Sacrifice, Diana, she wouldn't be so hard of showing no emotion like that. And then he turns about and have Clark be so cruel to her and so cold, and to purposely ruin that relationship and that friendship. And yeah, you were supposed to feel sorry for Diana because she had to make that decision. But at the same time, he didn't really convey, yes, you are supposed to be on Diana's side because she still was trying to be so hard up on it too. So if you would have showed just a little bit more emotion and compassion, of her as we done in Shelter, then you wouldn't have fanboys just, oh, Diana's ready to snap somebody's neck in like 5 seconds. You know, Jeff Johns too. If he didn't write Diana in, you keep telling me it's so many crisis, identity,
Infinite.
infinite crisis. When she was about to slice Mongol in half, you wouldn't have people thinking, oh, Diana has a sword, so she's ready to slice and dice people. It's certain writers that people praise and they are so blinded by in post crisis that they
And
forget.
Britt, remember, Infinite Crisis is the one where Jeff Johns has Golden Age Wonder Woman say to modern Wonder Woman, "You've been so many things, but the one thing you haven't been is human."
Exactly. Which, to say that when the only reason why Golden Age Wonder Woman is human is basically, I mean, she's an old raisin. You gave up your your youthfulness to be with a bland man. Come on, like,
God damn.
so you are old prune talking about, oh, she's not human because you done aged and turned into a prune. Like, no.
I love having you as co-host. And Jake goes, writers like Bruce Timm also. Oh God, they emphasize it's like when Tom King goes, she's a walking contradiction. I'm like, no, she's not.
Yeah,
Like, enough of this walking contradiction BS.
yeah, that whole thing, the contradiction is, yeah, it is BS. And you know what? That is where, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But Tom King is probably the reason why Superman is now a contradiction of the immigrant story.
Oh, most likely.
Because,
By when Cameron damn Britt is just going in.
you know,
She's been
Cam,
holding all this stuff in all week. Trust me.
yes, I have. And I also was not in a good mood and, very sickly. So, yeah, I'm letting it loose. I'm letting it loose.
I love
That's
it when
why,
Britt does that.
I am trying to hold in and be colorful with my sentences too, because Jared keeps catching me off guard and I'm about to slip. So yeah. So yeah, I'm
I know, Britt. We do have a special bond like that.
you had to put that in.
I
That was
had to.
good. That was
I
good.
have to diffuse some tension. That's it.
That
That's
was
good.
good.
KHL, well, you guys definitely love Wonder Woman to the bone. Someone has to.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
NJ's cheering you on. Go, Britt. Go.
Thank you. Thank you.
But yeah, and trust me, we'll get to more of that. Oh, I have a very special rant in mind when we get to our Superman review. And so then how this negatively impacted Wonder Woman, because here's the thing. Again, the comic, again, as you say in the notes, Britt, the comic one, it doesn't portray her as a saint, but it's more like she's more justifiable in the things she does.
Exactly. I mean, yeah, Flashpoint is supposed to be twisted, a butterfly effect, basically. That Barry, he wanted something. In a sense, he acted selfishly and basically ruined everyone else's life for his selfish act.
Yep.
And you were supposed to see the results of that. But at the same time, again, the comic, it gave you more depth, you know. Even though it is still twisted, but the characters had an actual story. For the animation, it just made it seem like just a bunch of fanboy BS, of everything that what online thinks of these characters. And especially with Diana. They think that either she goes from the snooty princess or being a warrior, she is supposed to be kill happy.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, so then you get to point two, the contradiction of her core values. And again, it's like, this is why I say the comics Flashpoint Wonder Woman, otherwise known as Queen Diana. You know what? I'm just going to call it Queen Diana. That's easier to say. But anyway, the comics Queen Diana is, she still is compassionate. Here's what I mean by that. Again, referencing when she discovered the prison camp, she goes, no, this is not what I wanted. It's like, well, actually, in the comics, it's kind of funny. Arthur is the aggressor like the entire time. Wonder Woman is like, stop, just stop. She is more on the, like you said, diplomatic and stuff. And I think she even takes in Tara because Arthur kidnapped her brother. So it's like, she's pretty much regular Diana at this point. Whereas the movie Diana is just Injustice Wonder Woman. It's pre-Injustice, Injustice Wonder Woman.
which, you know,
Thanks, Tom Taylor. You suck.
yeah, I
And Ed
mean,
Boon.
with Ed Boon, NetherRealms or whatever, as I've said multiple times, they have ruined so many of the female characters. I mean, you already have them dressed very inappropriately, but and they are supposed to have like this uh sex appeal or whatever. Dangerous but sexy, that femme
No,
fatale
don't
type
get me
thing.
wrong. I am a straight white male. I do
I
appreciate some
mean,
sex appeal. The problem
sure,
is,
but having
it's like when it goes excessive.
exactly, but having women, with that femme fatale type attitude and thinking that, oh, they're going to kill you know, um, or just be like the catalyst for these soy boy soft men. It's like they put the blame all on the woman instead
Hmm.
of the man who is codependent, who is emotionally stunted or emotionally, broken. Um, and it makes it seem like women are the evil. And that's very much that whole patriotic, or not patriotic, patriarchy. Well, shoot, patriotic too, because they think some people still have that old 40s 50 mindset that women are supposed to be barefoot and pregnant. So if you are independent as a woman, something is wrong with you, or you are basically an intimidation for a man. So a strong independent woman has to be evil, and that is pretty much what comics have portrayed women as, and video games. You have the Mortal Kombat story of Sindel. She was the queen of that um, whatever other realm, and she was possessed. But they changed the story to now she's the big bad evil one that's manipulating everyone. When the whole story since the creation of Mortal Kombat has been she was a victim, you know. So yeah, now they are DC is taking that same concept and turning it into a thing for Wonder Woman.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly, exactly. And it's like it's like again, it's like I get it, but the problem is when you get to like, it's like I'm fine with like, it's like when you, it's like when you like denigrate characters, that's when I really have problems. But NJ brings up also the Maxwell Lord incident shouldn't have happened. The worst part is Cal was being an a-hole about, despite the fact that he is killed. Oh, Superman and Batman have killed before that. And they're all like, get out. I don't know who you are anymore. And I go, bro, there's literally an entire omnibus of the adventure that you went on because you killed. It's called Superman Exile. So what are you talking about? And it's like, particularly Batman, because Batman created contingency plans, Britt, for
to
literally
kill
the
exactly,
exact same scenario that they were under. Literally, this is what he made it for.
exactly, and that is the thing. Superman. That's what I'm saying. Is that yeah, Rucka wrote the story, and you can blame when. This is what I don't like about writers. When they get the praise from the fans, of course they want to take all the credit. They will boast, and ego trip and all that. But when the story isn't being well received by the fans, then they want to blame editorial, or they want to blame um, even the artist, down to the artist, to say this is what the artist wanted to draw, something like that.
Yeah,
And that's pretty much what Rucka has done, even with Blackest Night, you know, out of nowhere. Everyone knows that he has an obsession with Batman. I mean, especially with him talking about he's a spiritual lesbian or whatever.
mm-hmm.
So he has this obsession with Batman, has this obsession with darkness, and you know, and he thinks that he can self-insert himself basically into Wonder Woman with that sort of obsession. And with having Diana again kill Maxwell, she was justified because he said it. If you don't kill me, then I will just continue on having
Under the
control.
lasso of truth.
Right, having control of Superman. But the fact that Rucka did not fight for Diana to have more respect than that for the sacrifice story tells okay where he aligns, which he doesn't care as long as Diana's relationship with Clark is ruined, he don't mind Diana being thrown under the bus for a minute. You know, he did the same thing with Rebirth, having Diana. Come on now, you are supposed to be a fan favorite Wonder Woman writer, and not only do you have her as a mouthpiece, but you also say that she doesn't know anything about romance or love when Diana is the embodiment of love. But you also have
And she
her
was just in a 5-year relationship with someone.
right, and you put her in a straitjacket. Are you serious? Like,
Mhm.
you know, make it make sense. The math isn't mathing. So all these fan favorite stuff, go back and read those certain stories and you see how bad they are for the character. And
Exactly.
you can't, some of these fans need to stop being so blind, you know, to these writers because they are no good, you know, for the character, especially when they have like another character that they actually care about, which he didn't want to, he wanted to write even Lois, you know, but even Lois, he advocated saying Lois isn't just Superman's girlfriend and all of that, but yet not even halfway through the Lois uh, series that he was writing, he turned it into a Renee Montoya book.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. It's because again, and Balgoon brings up a good point. Yeah, his whole spiritual lesbian thing is probably what created Batwoman. But the problem with that is that Rucker feels the need to force in his lesbian characters into inorganic places like that. I mean, even there, that the concept of that Lois book was boneheaded because it's basically like, okay, so Lois is all of a sudden aware of all the reboots, and I go, how?
Yeah, just trying to make her more, give her more than what she actually is. I mean, she is just a reporter. Yeah, she nosy as hell and she can figure out things, but at the same time, that's all she is. She doesn't help with anything else.
Exactly. And Battlegoon, the reason why, and actually Rucka addressed this in his book, in the aftermath of the Wonder Woman killing Maxwell Lord thing. She says, "Oh, because at the time Wonder Woman had also just killed Medusa, so she's like." The reason why they're upset is because Maxwell Lord looks human. It's harder to see the that he was an actual monster. That's why people are upset with me.
And you know what? That is total BS anyway, because as a writer, using these characters and using the story to basically send a message to the reader that basically don't judge a book by its cover or, you know, or don't be deceived by looks. Medusa might be an actual monster. Yes, she was evil, but in a sense, her background and her story that was not, you know, of basically of her doing. You know, she was innocent at first, and her tragic story turned her into a monster and villainous. You know, um,
Exactly. Well,
and
yeah. Go ahead.
and so you feel that empathy or you empathize with that. That just because I look like this doesn't mean that I'm some horrible monster. You know, you have to know my story basically. And then with Lord, yeah, he's still a man and he's still basically portrayed as a Caucasian man too. So it's like you don't get that sort of um in reality, you don't get that slap on the wrist or that pass that the world actually has inflicted, you know, of in a certain um sort of racial situation too. That just because you think Max looks this certain way of acceptance, that, oh, he can't be that bad. You can't kill him. You know, that says a lot about the writer and about the readers. And the message again that Rucka sends is awful. And especially with Diana, who is supposed to be the one person or hero, character that values all life, that values truth, and she doesn't do anything that is not 100% in her belief.
Exactly.
So, so with Killing Max Lord, it's a whole complex story and just a lot of elements that goes within that, that instead of actually exploring that depth of the complexity, you ruined it because of your own bias. You know,
Exactly. So then well, speaking of dudes, but it's like, again, it's like when you see Flashpoint Wonder Woman again, she is 100% portrayed as it's amazing how I just realized it. It's like Wonder Woman is treated like she is the stereotypical Amazon, what everyone thinks of when they think of the Amazons. They're all man-hating shrews. Like you said there, crazy woman scorned. And then again, they tried to like the fourth thing is like they tried to overly simplify a story, the already relatively simple story. They're like, okay, so here's the story. Wonder Woman was a war was manipulated, ipso facto. A war happened. That's the simple story. But they're like, okay, that's not simple. Let's make it where Wonder Woman's an evil Amazon and wants to kill all men.
yeah, let's just do that. Because that's simple, and they think that, again, making Diana that way makes her interesting.
Yeah, exactly. So then now let's talk about the other characters that Flashpoint that was like changed for like the movie and comics. Because all right, so we get to Aquaman. Again, the comics, he's not exactly like, I mean, you summarize it really well. It's the idea that like that he's manipulated and his grief is manipulated, because here's why. And they explain this. Consistent with the main continuity, by the way, Ocean Master sees Arthur as a false king, and so does Penthesilea. So what they want to do, they want to manipulate events so that Aquaman and Wonder Woman essentially kill each other. See, that's cool. But in this, yeah, he's basically a brute. That's it. And he's like very much like overly aggressive. Plus, again, who decided on these body proportions? I think Aquaman is the worst.
Aquaman looks like I said, they look like linebackers on steroids.
No, you know what they look like? They look like he's a regular guy inside a mech suit that looks like an Aquaman.
Yeah, that can go too. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's like, but I mean, they may have like overly simplified it, but Aquaman is more or less the same. Then we get to Superman, which Superman they didn't. Okay, so in the Aquaman comic, Aquaman Mecha, yeah, Balgum. In the comic, it's so in this, Superman crashes, but he doesn't crash in Smallville. He crashes in Metropolis in a meteor shower, and it basically causes a 9/11 style event. And he's taken by the government and raised by, at first, General Sam Lane, Lois's father. And they want to turn him into like essentially Dark Knight Returns Superman, where he is the like instrument of the United States government as like a super weapon. So what happens is he eventually what happens is Lex Luthor's father brings Lex to visit, and Crypto goes crazy and attacks everyone and is killed. but then because of that, General Lane is like taken out of like command. He's put, and Superman is put under the command of like a more strict general. At the same time, you also have like a soldier that's imbued with Kryptonian DNA turned into a weapon. Then you also have Lois showing up, because you can't ever have a Superman story without Lois. But
unfortunately.
Yeah, exactly. And in the Lois Lane miniseries, it ties into this, because in the miniseries they make you think that Lois Lane gets killed. She doesn't yet. She gets saved by Superman, and then she kills in his arm. She dies in his arms, and he holds her like he held Supergirl in Crisis, which was actually kind of cool. But in Flashpoint Beyond, they do something kind of interesting with this. And trust me, I'll talk about Flashpoint Beyond Wonder Woman later, because it's equally horrible. But with Superman, they made it where, okay, so they did what Gunn just did with the suit with the Kryptonians, and did the whole evil Kryptonians, the whole Kryptonians are evil conquerors. But in this, Superman standing against them, because he essentially says this world. Flashpoint Batman asks him, after everything you went through, why are you still fighting for mankind? And Superman says, because I've seen good in this world, and it's worth fighting to defend.
I mean, that's fine, but oh my gosh, I would say that again, Superman and well, Aquaman, it was Aquaman. He was the, you know, warmonger himself. But even though we always, talk about how Superman he's supposed to be his basically the same way in a sense. Maybe he has a little bit more attitude, or, or has a little bit more depth within him or complexity within him, that just because he isn't with the Kents, he is not that changes him from being Superman. That is the only thing positive that I give to this. That even if he is like a government experiment and all of that and being tortured, he still remained the hero that he should be.
Yeah, exactly. Which that was one of the ones where I'm like, okay, you kept it consistent with who Superman is. And even in the original comic, when like they do the whole when all hope seems lost, Superman still shows up and protects like the League. So I kind of like that. Then you get to Barry Allen, which it's pretty much the same thing. I mean, he goes through pretty much the exact same arc in this as the comic, so it's relatively the same. He goes through without knowing that he's the reason why this universe went to hell, which I think is actually kind of cool. And by the way, Battlegoon, I covered Cosmic Chaos on my gaming show, and Balgoon also says, question, going back to Rucka and his making Wonder Woman darker, how should a dark Wonder Woman story differ from the darkness in Batman stories? You have her go through like a dark, like, let's say a war or a battle. You still have the dark story, but have Diana try and fight to be essentially a light in it. Am I right, Britt?
It's kind of like reading League of One, or even Spirit of Truth, where Diana is trying to find her place, and she basically Diana's uh, challenge is that she is too ambitious. She thinks that what she's trying to do is prove to Hippolyta that the world has changed, and she can make it, change a little bit more and for the better. Especially with trying to show, like I said, Hippolyta and the Amazons that we can have open communication with man's world. Um, and she basically gets that reality check that no, it's not that easy. You also have where I think it's JLA 105, I think, where it's a random villain, but it's a brutal battle, and Diana feels like she is about to die. And so she has to make that decision of, should I kill this person or not? But she just she doesn't kill her, but she does, you know, has to she has to put all her strength in punching her, unconscious. And for that moment, she has that pain, well, I think that's what it's called, pain of the gods or something.
Hmm.
Um, of she was going to die, and she had to make this horrible decision of it's either me or you. She needed someone to talk to, and everyone else was doing their own thing. I think it was Jon Stewart and uh, Flash that was playing video games or something. They weren't paying attention. She tried to talk to John, Martian Manhunter, and he was like, "Well, he's not emotionally equipped to help her." So he tells her to go talk to Superman. And when she tells, Clark that she was almost, going to die, and especially with losing Hippolyta um, months before, I believe, it tormented her to think
Hmm.
of death. So you do have those certain elements there to have a dark Wonder Woman story, especially with the choices that she has to make. But you don't have to make Diana dark herself. You make things dark around her, but in order to give Diana that slight bit of darkness, quote unquote, it's just she has this um emotional conflict, and that is just choices that she has to make. And maybe there's a tragedy that happens that really just hurts her, but
So what
you
you're
don't.
saying is you put her in a scenario where she's written by Tom King.
Definitely not Tom King. Definitely, hell no. Definitely not Tom King. The way No, the way that you, first of all, no, I take that back. And here we go, revamping these stories. So with Tom King's story, you minus I was about to say Tom Treasure. Steve Trevor. You might as well say Tom
Same
Treasure.
thing.
Same, yeah, same damn thing. He's out. He's very much irrelevant. But the fact of Diana trying to save her sisters and seeing how the world would turn against her, because of government manipulation and things like that. That is a good story. That is a good Wonder Woman story, a dark Wonder Woman story, because she put so much of her faith and her love into the outside world, trying to be an ambassador of peace. And she's met with hostility. After all these years of fighting for this world that she loves so much, they reject her. And not only that, but they reject her sisters too. So that is the story that should have been told. Um, and it is basically it mirrors basically Hippolyta's story. And it's not so much of an I told you so to Hippolyta, because Diana will eventually overcome it. It's just that is the story that you would want to tell, is Diana going through that again, that reality check of the world isn't going to always be on your side. And they do have to continue to fight to keep, some type of trust, you know, within that, of the Justice League in general trying to do their jobs. Superman, he has basically a silver, has everything on a silver platter. He's the world's greatest. He's this American icon, this American acceptance. So he doesn't truly have that struggle anymore. They don't want him to have that struggle anymore. So it is put mostly on Diana. But yeah, that is a story, honestly, they both need, but properly executed. And yeah, Tom King definitely did not execute that properly at all.
Of course. Speaking of proper, man, oh my God, Britt, you just had a fantastic transition. Speaking of things Tom King screwed the pooch on, Flashpoint Batman. So in this, he's pretty much the same. Where in the comics, it's more of like of like he wants Barry Allen to undo the world, to undo Flashpoint, just so that Bruce can live. Which I'm like, I like that. I dig that. It's the same thing in the movie, and so the second time they returned to Flashpoint was in a storyline called The Button. It was supposed to point toward Dr. Manhattan being involved in the DC universe. It was part of the setup for Doomsday Clock. So Bruce and Barry chase Eobard Thawne throughout time and end up in the Flashpoint universe. And this is where you have Thomas Wayne meeting Bruce Wayne and fighting side by side. And then as they're leaving, Thomas Wayne goes, "Don't be Batman. Essentially, live your life." And then this would lead to Bruce proposing to Selina. But then when he still becomes Batman, that's when Thomas Wayne shows up and goes to war against his own son, manipulates Bane, and is basically the villain of Tom King's Batman run, because Tom King is incapable of writing any story that does not involve acute emotional trauma.
And the one thing that I also want to say about, the whole Dr. Manhattan thing is total BS. Like, that is a giant jar of sugar honey iced tea.
Well, you notice how since then they basically retconned it so it wasn't Dr. Manhattan?
Because it didn't make sense. Like, what does Dr. Manhattan has to do with the DC universe? It really just does not make sense. And honestly, I just think that Jeff Johns, he has a lot of ideas, it really seems like he might have had a dream or something. Maybe he got a little high and thought, "Oh, let me do this or something." Because, my dude, like, what possessed you to make it seem like Dr. Manhattan created New 52 or the DC universe? What possessed you to There's no connection whatsoever to Watchmen in the DCU.
Exactly. And so then you get to the other characters of Flashpoint. You get to Lois, Cyborg, and many others, which Lois, they degraded her role in the animated movie, which that's the only good part of the animated movie, is how little of a role Lois plays. But Cyborg is basically like the Superman of the universe in this thing, which I kind of like that. But it's like with Lois, it's like, again, it's in her comic that is exposed that like the Amazons have like prison camps that Diana shuts down. So that's about all the value that she contributes to the story.
What's funny is that in the comic version, Lois is drawn like wearing a Grecian dress, so she looks like Diana in a sense. And it's kind of like, a lot of these artists,
kind of like in Superman for Tomorrow.
Yes, a lot of these artists really want Lois to look like Diana.
Well, if you really want to draw Diana with Clark, there's a really simple solution to that.
Exactly. Just draw them together.
Exactly. But then again, that will require them to actually be mature human beings. And we all know that that's beyond them. Anyway, yeah, it's like, to summarize, the problem with this adaptation is that they significantly stripped away. Like, I'm not saying you had to cover literally everything of Flashpoint, but at the very least, don't like heap more BS and war crimes onto a character that arguably was a victim in this story.
Right.
That's the legacy of that stupid Flashpoint movie. Hey, what's up, Lewis? And it will yes, a QT. It did make Diana the other woman when she's not. It's like, that's not the issue that Aquaman and that Mira and Diana had, but it's like, it's so stupid. And then they basically tried to, I'm going to use this terminology. I know Britt is probably going to agree with me on this. They Michael Bay'd Flashpoint.
They did.
It's like, definitely, it'd be so great. As Barry's running, there's this massive explosion, so he can't go back. And apparently the entire universe ends because someone blows up Captain Atom.
I mean, they used Captain Atom to explode. I mean, that's pretty much what his character is known for now, I guess. But it, I don't know. It just when you go back to some of these stories, it's very problematic. You know, very problematic.
Exactly. Eventually, it just falls apart. Now, here's the thing. All right, there was there are two more portrayal parts of Flashpoint that I want to talk about. Two of them I've experienced, and Britt hasn't. Lucky for her. So, about a few years ago, DC Universe Online, the big the big MMO, did like an entire Wonder Woman style event, which on its own sounds pretty awesome. And for the most part, it was. We had all the different Wonder Women for the multiverse. You had like Bombshell's Wonder Woman, Red Sun, Nubia, Diana, obviously, Steve Trevor for some reason, and Queen Diana. The problem is they basically make it like we need to watch Queen. It's like even you can revisit the hub of this like DLC, Britt. And when you talk to Steve Trevor, he says, "Oh, that Queen Diana woman keeps mean mugging me the entire time," and I go. So they literally, apparently, the animated Flashpoint Wonder Woman Brit has become, yes, it is, Louis. I still play that game all the time. So the animated version for Flashpoint Diana has become the standard.
Which is terrible because why is animation having so much influence on the actual source material? Like, that is the point of the source material, is being the source.
And by Balagoon, no, what I meant was he's part of that DLC. But the point, but yeah, that is the point. It's because it's like it was kind of funny. Dio basically said this in the DC documentary, or he doesn't consider Marvel as competition. He considers TV and film as competition because he has failed if they start determining the proper like characterizations of these characters.
Which is kind of funny because at the same time he gave Dan Jurgens clout for DCEU to
And also threw a fit that Wonder Woman was so successful.
exactly. So his argument is so hypocritical and contradictory. It's kind of like on one end you're mad because Wonder Woman became a success, and then on the other end you gave Jurgens clout. Like what?
And did you hear that part of 5G? He wanted to have a transgender Wonder Woman.
No way.
Yeah, that was one of the things that he was promoting for this because literally it was as if it were a woke parody, but it's not. Where it's like we're gonna have a black Superman, we're gonna have a gay Superman, black Batman, trans Wonder Woman.
So Yara was supposed to be a transgender.
I don't know if it was Yara particular. I think no. It was back when it was going to be 5G.
So they were going to create a total different
Yeah,
character to be
I think
transgender.
because they wanted a dude to be able to be Wonder Woman.
You know, that is the most.
That's the stupidest thing of that. That's one of the many reasons why 5G didn't happen because everyone's like, we don't want this. Don't do that.
Yeah, but just that idea alone of like DC editorial and writers are so hell bent on Wonder Woman not being of female empowerment and having like this matriarchal like vibe and story to create a transgender Wonder Woman because and most guaranteed he would the Amazon or whoever would still identify probably as a male too. It's kind of like it really shows how Wonder Woman is very much an intimidation for these
if
editors.
you want a male Wonder Woman, go to Earth 11 with Wonder Man, where all the genders are switched.
Exactly. But instead, you create a character just to say that a man is within Wonder Woman's space. I mean,
Exactly. Isn't that
you can
funny?
have the thing is Wonder Woman is about acceptance of all, you know, except for, you know,
Mhm.
perils, right? But she is the inspiration for for everyone. And we saw that in DCAMU Justice League War when the guy was trying to talk bad about her, but she put the lasso on him and he revealed that he loves wearing the Wonder Woman costume because it makes him feel good and empowered. And Diana's like, be empowered, you know, that's good. Congratulations. That is how Diana's supposed to make everyone feel, males included. But to have male inclusion in Wonder Woman's story is not to take away from the females, though. It is to help bring it together that everyone can not so much as kumbaya, but at the same time, that's what it is.
Yeah,
Diana is about
and
everyone being
and
at peace.
yeah, and Balhoun. Yeah, there is, but the problem, but the point about that, look at how DC handled that. Yeah, I know the writer came out, and by Vita Ayala is not exactly the most like well done writer. Like she's known for forcing stuff into like into stuff where it's like it's inorganic. But yes, there is one. But notice how DC never references Bia being a man beforehand.
That's right. Well, I thought she was introduced.
In the comics, all it says is that she show. So the way it works is that Bia emerges from the like well of souls or something like that, and they go through the whole initiation ceremony, and then it's like proclaim your Amazonian name. And then she says, "I am Bia," and it feels like this is where I'm finally where I'm supposed to be after so long. It's something like that. She doesn't even reference being a dude beforehand.
Hmm.
So I'm like, you notice the way DC handled that, right? Ha ha.
Yeah, this is very poor.
Yeah, I know. Well, first off, again, it's like I get it's like here's the thing. Again, Vita Ayala is known for trying to force stuff into books. So there's a reason why the X-Men books fell apart at Marvel, and she's a major reason why. Anyway, so then you get to so they made a sequel to Flashpoint. So the only like so in the storyline, I'm gonna explain to you what happens, Britt, and tell. So as part of another event, Dar- what's her name, Louise? It's Vita Ayala. So it's like, all right. So as part of the Justice League Incarnate storyline, which again is a Justice League made up of characters from the multiverse, Darkseid shoots Thomas Wayne Batman with the Omega beams. Ordinarily, what this means is that you are like eliminated. You are dust, essentially. But somehow Batman is able to basically preserve this world in preserve his father and Flashpoint into a literal snow globe, essential. It's essentially a snow globe, Brit, but it has the entire Flashpoint universe complete with the Kryptonians and such. And I'm like, okay. And in this, again, written by Jeff frickin' Johns, one you discover that Aquaman won the war, and apparently all the Atlanteans now are fish people. I don't know what that's about. And so Batman is trying to like nuke the world because he goes, nothing matters. So, all right, he frees Wonder Woman, and then she goes, "Oh, so he goes, I need your lasso because I need Arthur to tell me where to find something." And then Diana says, "And then what? We must retreat back to Themyscira, forget our war against the rest of the world." And then Batman's like, "No, do whatever the hell you want. I don't care." So Wonder Woman kills Aquaman, and then Then she says, "Prepare. Tell your people to prepare, for we will be coming to destroy your world." And I go, "Oh, God damn it, Jeff!" And that's all we see of Flashpoint Diana. Now, you could say that this is like another, a different. This is not the Flashpoint Diana, but the general audience that's reading this isn't gonna know that.
Yeah, and the thing is, again, Jeff Johns, he is it's like he really wanted to do his greatest hits type thing, especially
Mm-hmm.
with he he was moving slow as molasses with Doomsday Clock finishing.
Well, also,
He
it's kind of funny. This was taking place during. This was coming out concurrently with Dark Crisis, and the funny part is there's literally a storyline in this, and that literally spoils Dark Crisis, and the Justice League returns from the dead.
wow.
And remember when DC said that to try that whole omniverse thing where they go everything matters?
Yeah,
Well, Jeff
when
weighs in on that in this, and then he literally has Batman go, "Everything matters." What a load of BS.
exactly. I mean, when everything matters,
Nothing
basically,
matters.
no, right.
But it's just like when I'm as soon as I get to the Wonder Woman part, no, Louise, this is after Doomsday Clock because what happened was Doomsday Clock took like a year and a half to get out to come out because it kept getting delayed. That's why we got to like metal and death metal because Jeff was taking forever for Doomsday Clock, but they needed an event to come out, so that's why we got death metal and everything mattering. But they would later ignore that. But it's like with this, I'm like, you wrote the original miniseries, and I'm sure you oversaw the tie-ins. You know this isn't that Diana.
Yeah, but again, the whole well, this is a one trick pony type thing, and it's
Mm-hmm.
also a lot of revisionist stuff and going down, greatest hits. I mean, at the time, Jeff Johns he was losing momentum for DC anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So, like I said, moving slow with Doomsday Clock, it didn't even make sense. And then you have this, whatever this was. I mean, what's the point of Flashpoint Beyond when it really just doesn't connect with the original story, and it also just is pointless. Like, what was the purpose of this?
To assassinate other characters, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, it's probably for like marketing, Britt. It's marketing.
Sure, sure.
Yeah, exactly, sure. But it was like one of the weirdest things I have ever read, and I'm just like, no. But anyway, so Britt, we've kind of been talking about it during this episode, but explain to us why Wonder Woman, the evil Wonder Woman, is stupid. By the way, speaking of Jeff Johns.
Okay, so Wonder Woman being evil, like I said, it ruins, just her perception that you simplify her as, oh, she's the one that will kill first. She needs to be tamed by um, any male character, and that the Amazons are misandrous, that you know, they're baby killers. And they don't take Wonder Woman serious. She is supposed to be like this femme fatale character now. And how is that? You already have where she was supposed to be the ambassador of women at the UN, I think back in 2016. And it was stripped away, I think, less than a week later because some women, like within the UN, complained that about her, bodysuit. And the thing about Wonder Woman's bodysuit is supposed to empower women to basically feel good about their bodies, no matter what size, no matter your height or anything like that. You were supposed to feel empowered. But obviously, some women are intimidated too. So, yeah, they thought that she was sexualized and that she couldn't be this um this representative for female empowerment, for female or young women to have this role model. So now combined with that of thinking that she's, overly sexualized, you have her now as a happy-go-lucky killer because of male writers thinking that that's what a warrior means. And no, that's not what that means. Warrior, you fight. What is she doing? She's fighting for peace. She is a warrior of peace. She's the ambassador of peace. She's the embodiment of love and truth. Yes, will she go to those lengths if necessary? But it's if necessary. But to just simplify her character because writers have writers have such a difficult time grasping that a woman can be so strong and independent in such a way and have such a complex personality and also have this message of true women empowerment and women um, being, confident in who they are. It seems unfathomable. So, like I said earlier, women who have that confidence have to be evil.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And also, with this panel, again, written by Jeff Johns, being lazy because this panel has been totally taken out of context with the fact of Diana dealing with her villains. Okay, how is that when the first couple of issues of Justice League, she did not want to kill Barbara. That hurt her. She thought that Barbara was her friend. She wanted to save her. You see in whether it's Diana's solo book or in Superman and Wonder Woman or any other story, Diana has not killed a villain. So this was totally just Jeff Johns, and he admitted it too. He said that he was trying to make conflict, and
Well,
especially
not only that, Britt. So this story is like interspersed with like Madame Xanadu reading tarot cards, and Superman's tarot card says the hero, and Diana says the warrior.
right, which again is kind of like you are oversimplifying the idea of the warrior.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And I go again. What is it about DC writers that when they want to force in like drama, they do it so crappily? I'm looking at you, Tomasi.
Right.
That's where it really gets to me because I'm like, I get it. Well, also, here's the thing. You don't always have to have drama in a story. Yes, it can aid it, but you don't always have to do that. And then Barry Cameron says, "Well, Britt, these writers are from the days of a woman's place should be in the kitchen." Yeah, that's true, but that's why again, that's another reason why, as I've said many times, that that like DC really needs to start like filtering out the older writers. In other words, make it so okay, you guys have contributed greatly, but it's time for you to move on.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they clearly don't know how to write for the modern day because they only listen to Twitter. Jared, he's got a point. Anyway, so then you get like, arguably one of the worst versions, Injustice Wonder Woman. Oh God. It's to the point. I should put a trigger warning over any picture that has Injustice Wonder Woman.
So in Justice Wonder Woman, again, as I explained earlier, she is basically Sindel 2.0. She is basically the the scapegoat for Superman of why he turned into the evil dictator of and having her be the devil on his shoulder, the snake in his ear and everything, and wanting her to be jealous and in love with him. Um, you know, after Lois's death. But it does not make sense when you read. in Justice Year One or Year Zero or whatever the hell Taylor wanted to milk from this, when Diana's supposed to be old as dirt and she was on the JSA team, so she says that those are good men. And even though, and then right afterwards or before, you have her origin where she had to kill Steve because he was a Nazi and manipulating her. And somehow she still remained good, I guess. Or no, she wasn't good, but somehow she did turn good to be on the JSA. She was inspired by the JSA
Those
members.
men who are known as the best men she's ever seen, and she served in the JLA as well. And I go,
And then
what?
she yeah, joins the JLA. And so I would say that this Diana, as I said, she's old as dirt. So
It's a
she's
common
been
theme.
in man's world for over 100 years. And now all of a sudden, with Superman, she wants to turn evil. Yeah, that surely makes sense. That definitely makes sense.
Oh yeah, it's definitely not contrived at all. It seems like with that comic they wanted to. By the way, they also took a lot from the Wonder Woman movie with that comic, and I go, bro, stop.
Yeah,
Make up your own crappy origin.
yeah. It's kind of like at that time, they saw Wonder Woman as well. The DO was still in charge, and if he was mad that Wonder Woman made a lot of money, well, that is why Wonder Woman didn't have exactly the best promotion, within comics. She was pushed a little bit, but you can tell that she did not get that attention that she deserved. And what it did catapult it was her just being old as dirt, being the first hero of the 5G concept or whatever. And within, you know, the already convoluted, you know, continuity that they have. But other than that, and also forcing her to be with Steve and obsessed with him or whatever, being pathetic. But to actually elevate her character, no, she did not have that. And then you have also the um, half baked, animated movie with of Bloodlines that was trying to piggyback off of the 2017 movie. Tomorrowverse, I would say that that was a piggyback too, but again, Jim Craig did do the best of, of having, first of all, it's on Earth 2, where you do have Diana with at least Clark, who was the same age as her. But you still have her as this immortal, goddess that has this tragic backstory that everyone that she loves end up dying and she is ultimately alone. And that's just not Diana's story. Diana's story that, yes, she's alone, but she finds someone, essentially Clark, and also a found family with Julia and Vanessa, and everyone else around her becomes her family, along
Exactly.
with the Amazons. And so to take that all the way and reduce it to, oh, if she's not with this bland blonde man, then she doesn't have anything of motivation is it just takes away who her character is.
Exactly. And then NJ says Tom Taylor is another crappy writer who butchered Diana and all. Yeah, exactly. It's a bloodthirsty kill. Yeah, exactly. By the way, Louise asks, which version of Sendel are you referring to, Britt? Mortal Kombat 9 or 1?
One, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
The newest Mortal Kombat, I believe is where they made the whole story twist.
Okay, I see. And then Balgoon says Tom Taylor was interviewed saying he hated making Clark and Diana bad, but he had to in order to work for DC. Injustice was his first big project, and he's into the. He didn't have to make her that bad, though. No, see, here's the thing, Battlegoon. Here's the thing. I'd long say if you look at Injustice, the Injustice 1 comics weren't as bad as Injustice 2. Injustice 2 is where it really gets bad. And then Injustice, the comics are themselves better than the Injustice games, because the games are where they really make Diana the villain. The comics, yeah, she does some morally questionable stuff, but still, it's like, it's less understandable than like Flashpoint, because in Flashpoint she's arguably still a good person, but it's not as horrible as the games.
I mean, that's true, but it's still the fact that you didn't have. You're right. You didn't have to write her as evil as that. I truly, and especially because that is.
And by the way,
like
real quick, I don't buy Tom Taylor being all, oh, I had to. I'm like, no,
exactly,
you didn't, bro.
Because look at how he wrote Earth 2. He wrote Superman as a villain there.
Yeah, he didn't have to. So it's more like that's just him covering his ass, because I'm sure he constantly gets blasted on social media because of that.
Yeah, he wrote Deceased, with Diana being basically the worst zombie.
Yeah, exactly.
Being
She was like essentially the queen zombie, essentially. And then we also have James Tynion with Diana being a queen vampire and being in a relationship with Nightwing, I think. I don't know how that storyline goes.
Yeah, so, with sometimes, these writers, that's why I say they need to be held accountable. And instead of being fan blinded or whatever, fans need to open their eyes and see that these writers love to manipulate people, in order to write what they want and get away with it without having that sort of backlash. I mean, Tom Taylor, he can't take criticism, neither can Tom King. And they are ready to block people and stuff, but the reason why they feel like they can do that is because so many other fans, like I said, don't hold them accountable. If you had more fans actually talking and not licking their boot, then maybe they would, well, I don't know, because Tom King has a big ego that even if you deflate it a little bit, it's still big. So I don't know, but egos need to be deflated quickly.
Oh, exactly. And NJ, I wouldn't exactly say that, because there's Jeremy Adams and me, if I ever got to write for DC. There are people. It's just they keep allowing crappy writers to put her in there. But anyway, so then you also get the whole Flashpoint thing, the way it's portrayed. At least the comics one, it's more aligned with with Diana's world. With this, it's like, no, every Amazon is evil and wants to kill men. And I go, no.
Right. I mean, that is what they think the Amazons are. Just the same thing as them saying that Amazons are, are evil. That, or that, no, the Amazons are all lesbians. They have simplified them in the most insulting type ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. But Louis says, it's hard to take seriously with Monroy saying we did it because orders, and then most of the time on how they write the story sometimes. Yeah, exactly. But then it's like they still write them that way. But even worse, the twist Diana is a one-off issue to have her vampirize Harper Row and raise her. Yeah, exactly. It's really bad. But anyway, yeah, it's like all of this just falls apart really fast. And then, as you wisely say, I may add, it gets into the fact that the male heroes aren't treated like this. Because when Diana killed Maxwell Lord, it was like, oh my gosh, he was like, she's like horrible. I don't think we can trust Wonder Woman anymore. Where when Superman killed a couple of Kryptonians that look human, everyone was like, okay.
Yeah, the what DC does with and we see it all the time, Batman is um their golden boy, their milked cow, you know. So they
Milk
aren't
cow.
going they aren't going to, do too much damage to his character. Superman, I mean, as I said earlier, they want him to be like this American icon, this American dad, very vanilla, boring, and stuck in the status quo. That's comfortable with his middle-aged fan base.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
then with Wonder Woman, again, you have the predominance of male readers and writers who just can't fathom a female character who can truly stand, you know, on the same level of Batman and Superman. She is the female hero, the greatest one. And they just don't like that. And we see it all the time on Twitter when they ask about, oh, who's the top four, Mount Rushmore of heroes, replace the Trinity with someone else. And they always say replace Diana with someone else. They never say truly Batman or Superman. And that really just shows how even DC fans, themselves do not truly respect Wonder Woman or envious of her or intimidated by her. And so, yeah, she becomes the scapegoat for a lot of the problems that DC has. She becomes the villain, the misunderstood, because, and they just don't want to solidify her supporting cast and her purpose, and just everything around her has to change, and it has to change for the comfort of the writer.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
Perez built a strong foundation for her, and it's like as soon as he left, they just took a sledgehammer and just you know smashed it, because it felt like, no, this is too perfect. This is too good for Wonder Woman. She doesn't deserve this. We need something that is more of our preference. And the deal also has admitted that they don't like having that pressure to commit to the expectations of things. So with Wonder Woman as her character, and that goes to the extent even with her relationship with Clark, they don't want that expectation that should be met with Wonder Woman and her relationships, because we expect for her to get 100% respect, and also her to have the spotlight. The fact that Tomasi was just so confident and actually admitted that he had problems with having her, you know, um, share the spotlight, says a lot, and it definitely is conveyed within how DC has handled her character ever, since Rebirth.
Yeah, exactly. And so then you get to, yeah, it leads to a lot of like long-term damage on the character, as Britt and I have said, as the people in the chat have said. And essentially, again, and this is something Britt and I have said all the time, it's like, look, if you're not going to represent her properly, then stop calling her the third member of the Trinity, because you don't treat her as the priority or with respect as she deserves. If you're not going to do that, stop emphasizing her.
Right. I mean, that is pretty much why the Trinity concept and everything got to go for me.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Because it's like, because arguably it has kind of led to a lot of like bad stories for Wonder Woman. Because remember, the whole reason why Trinity exists is because Superman has a kid and Batman has a kid. So Wonder Woman has to have a kid. And I go, no, she doesn't. And by the way, that is the worst reasoning for giving Wonder Woman a kid.
Right.
But no, it's because Tom King is a hack. DC needs to be honest. No, 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 no. Well, yeah, Batman, Batman, and Batman. That is kind of true. Yeah, it's still stupid with Trinity. I mean, DC is Wonder Woman. Yeah, I know, but still, it's like again, they try to emphasize her, but they don't emphasize her in the comics because the reason why she has the reputation of not having good like legendary stories, even though she does, it's because DC doesn't push them. They don't repackage them, they don't reprint them nearly as much as Batman or Superman stories. Like how many times has For Tomorrow or For All Seasons been reprinted, or Hush or Nightfall many, many, many times, where then we're just getting reprints of the Wonder Woman omnibuy.
Yeah, I mean, how many times are you going to, reprint Death of Superman? Which honestly, Death of Superman is a terrible, terrible story. No depth whatsoever. It's, a it's a spectacle. It caused, almost or did the market and everything to crash, the comic market. So why is it being celebrated? But you have a story by George Perez that is widely loved and praised that, as I said, set the foundation for Wonder Woman with the supporting cast that you solidified, you know, her cast and her purpose and, who's important to her and everything like that. But yet they couldn't keep that foundation. And then yeah, Batman, you can do anything with Batman because Batman fans, it's to a certain degree, they will act a fool and sometimes hate on things, but majority of the time they will support, you know, everything because they love Batman. They love anything Batman. The Superman fans are very specific, and like I said, they act like old men, very much the living embodiment of that hello fellow kids meme.
Mm-hmm.
And also, as I always say, repressed chihuahuas because
Yeah.
they are very much loud little barks, but they just have this little man syndrome act and very much the Captain Save a Thoughts Brigade. So, that's what that is. And they very much are intimidated by a woman who doesn't need saving. They can say, Lois is this and that, but as we see in the Superman marketing, Lois was not actually in that marketing as much. She was in the character posters. She was in, the character little um, videos or whatever on Instagram. But actually, within promoting the with the marketing, it was crypto.
Mm-hmm.
that it was crypto that really got that push. So if your supposed biggest female lead is being overshadowed by a superpowered dog, that says a lot. And that says a lot about the Superman fan base and how they are all talk, but in actual supporting, they do nothing. And Lois is also her fan base in itself. We see on Twitter right now that they are propping up Chloe and Lois, you know, as this end all be all type relationship and the best greatest comic book couple. But again, other couples have been way more successful, or you have to belittle and demonize, villainize, or use Wonder Woman, Lana Lang, Maxima as stepping stools for Lois. in order for her to be propped up. That's not the way to do it. If you have to do that with your character or with a certain relationship, that shows the foundation is very weak.
Yeah, exactly. So before we move on to our sales and stuff, let me ask you this: how do you rate the Flashpoint movie on a scale of 1 to 10?
0 out of 10. What are you talking about? One? No, it's not even getting a one.
Now, how do you rate the comics that you read?
Three.
That's low. I'm surprised.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but Diana, you're Diana still, regardless, she still is treated in is she still doesn't get that respect that she deserves. And yeah, I'm going to
Everyone's
be
like, "Damn, Britt."
what? I am not okay. We have had decades of Diana being disrespected. Why am I going to give high ratings to like even the bare bar as low in hell minimum of at least an ounce of respect? No. So you're gonna get what you deserve. The animation is a 0 and the comic is a 3.
All right, all right. And by the way, Dave, we will talk about that in a second. So let's go to a very, very interesting thing. So the June comic sales came out, and again, your boy has ICV2, which, by the way, is paying for itself in gold. So what we discover is, okay, so first off, Absolute Wonder Woman issue 9, despite launching at the end of the month, was in the number 9 spot. Awesome. Like,
Right.
my God, wow. But also, we got 2 other series we're tracking. Now let's see. All right, so Tom King's Wonder Woman 94. It went down again.
Right.
And Trinity. Let's see. Where did Trinity? I think it was like 75.
It was 78, yeah.
Yeah, 78. Just got cut off. By the way, isn't it kind of interesting? Not only that, real quick, we'll talk about that. Isn't it kind of interesting how in a month that's supposed to be all about Superman, none of the Superman book except Absolute Superman are like even in the top like 20?
Exactly. That is something else that I'm also um that is also very eye-opening because and that's the big issue on Synergy too. That the internet, Twitter and all of that, they talk a lot, but in reality, it is so small. And as I said, with the Chloe's fan base right now, they are just really they are taking shots at every other couple, and even to where Scott Snyder had to basically explain his stance on how Batman is he the difference between Batman and Superman, and how Batman doesn't need a romantic relationship. His whole thing isn't, centered around that being an importance. He can have it, with Selena, but it's not that much of an importance. Superman isn't even important either, but because that is Lois's role, she doesn't have anything really beyond that, then you have to emphasize on that she is the love interest. With Batman, his relationship is truly with Gotham, and he is the broken boy and everything like that. So that has so much more depth than Superman playing Captain Save a Thought with Lois. And and it really shows how this movie and all of that supposed to be of Superman is the number one, hero. He made superheroes, or first creation or whatever, and inspires heroes. But honestly, if if that's the case, you know, it shouldn't have been this hard to have a Superman movie, and it also just shouldn't be this hard to actually sell the character as
Yes.
as as a solo himself as himself. You know, you need a superpowered dog. You need um other characters. You need to basically belittle other characters and use them as stepping stools. You know,
That's what
um,
DC does, Britt.
this movie was supposed to be about kindness, but yet it has brought out the worst in people, and
Mm-hmm.
it is very ridiculous. I would say that the whole back and forth thing with Snyder fans and Gunn fans, very childish. I mean, you're only being puppets and just playing into WB's game, or they've already set the bar low of this movie, saying that it at least make 500, you know. Um, but they want like this goodwill for fans, but honestly, it's kind of like they're basically going back to the mindset of Rebirth, when they brought back the whole nostalgia trip, and but Rebirth did worse, or um a little bit less than New 52, but as long as they were satisfying this certain fan base, and everything was all good, then they were okay with that. And this is the same thing that's happening with this movie and with DCU, is that you're basically marvelizing, MCUing, the DCU with the brightness and just the mindless, like cartoony, wacky stuff. And but there's no true depth or plot within this movie. And your whole thing is, oh, it's just about kindness. It's kind of like the bare basic and the most tedious of things, and saying that, oh, kindness is what makes you human. Well, yeah, like, duh, Sherlock.
Mm-hmm.
that
Exactly.
that shouldn't be just your main thing. That it comes off so superficial. And if you have to do a story like that instead of something in depth, and you also do something that's so like, it is basically everything that is so basic and so basic of Superman. Like, it's not something that's actually unique. It's very on the nose, very predictable of what people expect from Superman. Just, I mean, from the underwear to having, him just right off the bat being with Lois, the um the 5 minutes of the galoot, Clark, um, you know, the Daily Planet cast being just basically jokes in a sense,
Yeah.
but
So here's the thing. Oh, and by the way, Britt, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
oh no,
Go
you're
ahead.
good.
Oh, okay. So here's the thing. So largely, I enjoyed the Superman movie. I know a Snyder fan enjoying a gun film. That must be a really weird idea. Now, before I say anything, I know you people watching the stream understand this because you're all cool people, and I know for sure that Britt understands this. I just want to say this for any new viewers: it's okay to like both movies, just like I do. Let me put it this way: this movie is not my favorite Superman movie. Obviously, it's Man of Steel. This is probably number 2 in terms of Superman enjoyment. Now, there are Cameron. Oh, trust me, Cameron, we're gonna get to that. We gave it its own slide, but so here's my thoughts on Superman. I be a 7 out of 10 because I enjoyed the action, and I thought David Cornsweet was a pretty good Superman, and I do and I liked like a lot of the other characters like Guy Gardner and Master Terrific and stuff. And again, the action scenes were pretty cool. The reason why I take off 3 points is because, and Britt summarized most of the points there, is because most of the emotional moments were like undercut by jokes, like the scene from the where he's like putting on his boots as like the eye thing is attacking. That's like undercut by Guy Gardner showing up and hitting it with a bat, which works for the time. However, but it was like the issue there is like, okay, it's supposed to be an emotional moment, but yet you're doing jokes, and it's one of those things where I'm like, Gunn cannot stop being Gunn, and I go, bro, this directly undermines the movie. And then, and by the way, Battle Goon, they showed you why he couldn't cover Zod's eyes earlier in the movie in the Metropolis in the Smallville fight. I would invite you, obviously after the stream, rewatch Man of Steel and watch the Metropolis fight, particularly Superman versus Faora. It kind of explains that. But the point is, then they decide, and this is a point where it lost me. So they make it so Superman was sent to Earth to conquer it and then to basically have a super harem.
And this is why, you know, I was being generous with my rating of a 6.5, but honestly, I would have it a 5 because of that, because it has cultivated, you know, a lot of these fans to think that if Superman embraces both sides, then he isn't accepted. So, what he had to do within this movie, and I can't stand the fact that Gunn boasted this movie as, oh, he's trying to balance both sides of, you know, of
Because
his
he's not.
heritage, and he's also, this is an immigrant story. No, you are not telling the proper immigrant story. If anything, you are telling immigrants to reject their heritage in
Mm-hmm.
order to be accepted as American. And you also have Superman, of course, in a very basic American relationship too. You know, so that that message is really insulting, you know, and the fact that the Superman audience of this was Americans, like majority of American males
Mm-hmm.
and Caucasian males at that, you know, it really says a lot of how Superman is not of a true diverse, he's not a true diverse character, which he should be. You know, out of all this time, who he is, who he represents, being a Moses allegory, being an immigrant, refugee story, um, being an alien, he is supposed to represent all of that. And we talk about this all the time. Our show is founded upon Clark and Diana and um, being othered and celebrating their otherness and celebrating culture, celebrating who they are as being unique. But yet Superman just like completely wipes that away because you have him, and especially with Saffron said, he was like, his interview of talking about Superman, every sentence he said, he had to say Superman is American. And it's like he was bashing, you know, people's heads, bashing that over the heads of everyone. And
Oh, and
and
by the way, Cameron summarizes my issue. This is gonna be the first, a lot of new people's first interaction with Kryptonians. They're gonna think, oh, they're all conquerors. They're basically Viltrumites.
exactly. Is that makes no sense at all. You know,
And then Gunn's
especially,
like, it's from the comics. And I go, so is Lois Lane wearing blackface. I'm not saying put that in a movie.
and the fact that, but also it's the fact that you in this time in 2025 when so many immigrants are being abused, are being removed from their homes, you know, are being villainized, you put out a story like this. And the fact that, you know, the internet is praising this to make it okay. Well, I take that back. The movie itself is being blindly praised for some reason. I like because it's mindless, but the story itself with the L's is being um confronted and talked about in a negative way as it should be. But at the same time, it's the fact that Gunn, I don't think he will take that criticism. I think he will have that ego and you know because that
He's not going to. The very fact that, and there are people saying, oh, he could change that later. That's the cope. Remember the cope when people said, oh, they'll give him a new suit at the end of the movie? No, they didn't.
yeah that
Which,
that
by the
is
way, I will
funny.
say that the suit you didn't know, it didn't look as bad as it had in the trailers and the marketing. So I'm like, that's the one part where you know what, I'm not gonna worry about the suit. It looked for the most part fine. But you know, they released the concept art for the suit, Brit, and they were this close to literally doing the new 52 armor.
Really,
It was one of the designs.
really.
Complete without the trunks and with the red belt.
Was that or was that fan art?
No,
Because
no,
it
no.
was
It's according to I got sent it by Darius. Hang on, I'll check real quick. But it says okay. So hang on. So Darius said this is first look at James Gunn's Superman concept art. Wait. Oh, sorry. This is fan art, not official concept art. All right. I hate when they do that. Stop labeling it as official stuff.
right. I mean, here's the thing with just we want DC to succeed because they've been taking L's. I mean, they love L's, because they boast about Lois all the time.
And
So,
ironic how they have a lot of L's because when you think about it, Superman's parents wanted him to make a lot of L's, if you know what I mean.
yeah. But they basically wanted him to be Space Zeus, And
They wanted him to lay a scroll everywhere, eh, Britt?
exactly, exactly. They sure did.
But
Um,
it's like that's my problem with this because and by the way, so the movie is doing well domestically, but again,
abysmal internationally because again, with having Superman be just this American icon and
or like no, no,
he
no, it's not necessarily that. It's more like emphasizing that so heavily in the marketing.
exactly. But well, I mean, that's what James Gunn and Safran said is that Superman is this American icon. So you
Well,
you
the other
basically
thing,
shot
Britt,
yourself in the
I
foot.
wouldn't be surprised if this is also part of the reason why the Captain America movie that recently came out did not perform that well.
That too. I mean, right now, internationally, the world is, in a sense, at war with each other, and America is basically the catalyst, in a sense, of the war, So, yeah, when you're boasting about how America is great and everything, but yet you have immigrants again being deported, you have them being abused and taken out of their homes, and everything else that's crazy happening in America. Do you actually think people want this sort of sugar coated like fantasy being pushed on them? No.
Yeah, exactly. It's like let me put it this way: we're not. It's like you don't necessarily because you know what it looks like. It looks like because part of the thing that a part of the issues that like other countries have with America is how we're constantly getting involved in their matters. And then what does Superman do in this movie?
He does that. And it does give off that white savior type trope. And again, you are doing a lot of things that is accepted in America, and that's probably why the domestic box office is doing way better. And the international, well, first China, they don't really care for American superhero movies anymore.
They
They
used to.
used to, but it's just a burnout for them. And then in a lot of other other countries, they just aren't interested. In Europe, F1, I mean, it's a race car um, movie, so they are definitely into that. Um, Dinosaurs, Jurassic World.
Everyone loves dinosaurs,
Yeah, exactly. So you have that, but
including Britt.
superhero, yes, but Superman is he's very safe, and the only people that are really just praising this, as I said, are diehard fans, gun fans, or just, people who are doing it out of spite, even, against the
Because of
Snyder.
the Snyder, exactly, because of the Snyder stuff. And I go, look, if you have to constantly, and the hilarious part, Britt, the people that constantly bring up Snyder are the same people that keep telling me to move on from liking Snyder movies. But what can you say? And these are the same people that will critique Man of Steel, even though Man of Steel put a lot of emphasis on the Kryptonians and portraying them positively, whereas
Yeah,
like
the fact
mm-hmm.
that, what I loved about Snyder, Man of Steel, was Laura. The fact that she had that moment and she actually had lines.
Mm-hmm. Like
you
a
know,
lot of lines.
she was actually part of the story and was important in the story. She was a true mother, you know.
Yeah, it's because what they said was in order to understand, and Nolan did kind of the same thing with because Nolan was one of the main producers of Man of Steel. Nolan and Goyer said because the reason why we had to devote 20 minutes to Krypton, or it may have been less, but still a lot of the movie to Krypton is because we need you to understand where Superman comes from. That's
Yeah.
what you do.
And the thing is with and with this, with making Laura, she wasn't mute because she told him to go,
She may have well been.
yeah, she definitely should have been. And but for Gunn to go totally backwards and, you know, wanting Krypton and the elves and everything to be evil so he can push more to to justify, oh, I love being human, or this is what being human means. It's such a backwards message, and that is not for kids. And like I said, the with New 52 Superman, he was killed off first because he punched a cop, in a sense. It was actually some type of demon shadow, you know,
And it's
disguised as
DC's
a cop.
fault for not explaining. He wasn't punching the cop
Right,
because he was a cop.
right. But it's the fact that he did still punch a cop, and also the fact that he did represent going against the U.S. government. And at that time, you had the Black Lives Matter. You had that sort of political high, and they basically took that opportunity of, well, we want to go back to traditional, more
It's
acceptance.
hilarious when you say traditional Brit because, as you and I have said, what version of Superman is the new 52 heavily inspired by?
Well, yeah, traditional. New 52 is modern day golden age,
Yeah,
but
but
again,
uh,
the fans, they don't know nothing about that. They
yeah,
think that
you know
Superman,
why I had to ask that.
yeah, they
But by the way,
think
isn't it kind of funny? Okay, so Superman's going against the U.S. government. If only there was a run where he literally did that. Or wait. If only his first comic book issue had him doing just that. Huh.
exactly. But Superman was created by John Byrne in 1986.
And he
So,
likes kissing 14-year-old girls, according to John Byrne.
right, and he loves America. America the Great. So,
Which he would like his home country. Don't get me wrong on that, but it's he straight up would not say, "Oh, this country's so perfect."
right. But you have that now.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Or it's like, remember in the Tomasi Superman run where one of the covers for the 4th of July was him, John, and Lois doing the whole drum and like flute thing from the American Revolutionary War?
That, and also within those issues, how he was running down American history and was like, and how people should know American history instead of pop culture, or
Well, he's
that
got a
every
point there.
no, Jared, come on now. I mean, yeah, just because people are just because people are invested or
Well,
interested in knowing
w-
pop culture, that
what
still
I
goes within, knowing your history.
yeah, but
And
what I mean is it's a problem when Americans can't even name like the first 5 presidents.
I mean, I can't and I don't care because, first of all, half the thing is half of American history that we learned in school, and you know this because you studied it, it's all glossed over, and half the stuff isn't true. You know, it takes like people that are, you have to do some real deep diving, and I mean in scuba gear, deep dive, not the pinky toe in a bottle cap, deep dive. You have to go in depth with your history research
Oh,
because
and by the way, real quick, Dave brings up a good point. He goes, ironically, half the audiences believe this movie isn't American enough, and I go, "Pfft."
well, yeah, his thing is whole is
You know what's
the human
kind of
way.
funny? Remember the whole truth just in human way? That's never said in the movie.
No, it's just said in that book, but it's still kind of like it. I mean, human is still, for Americans, they still believe human equals America.
Hmm.
And anything other than that is not American. I mean, that is why you have slavery, because people who weren't American, people who weren't of a certain skin tone, were treated as animals, or, as something that is not human. So that is pretty much what that is.
Yeah.
And as I said, with pop culture and American history, you can tell a story. You can tell American history within pop culture.
I
And
mean, I
you,
did it for school once, but it's also like if
that
if people don't even know their own currently serving representatives, that's a problem.
but also, I mean, and of course, I always have to bring it up. I always have to bring it up. But within
Are you
music,
gonna bring up Beyonce?
I am, because her current album is telling the history of not only country music, which has been glossed over, and the history of it has been buried to how what is perceived as now, but also it pertains to Black history and where cowboys actually derived from and that still goes within American history, and where music and the sound and the the purpose of certain, lyrics and everything like that, that goes into history. So no, the way Tomasi um made that, it's not black and white like that. It's not you choosing one over the other, as they have Superman choose one over the other of his identity. It is all combined together. You pop culture and history, American history, world history, everything, that all goes, you know, it intermingles together. So, for, like I said, for Tomasi to belittle that, it it didn't make sense. And you're definitely acting like an old fart that does not understand the way generations learn, and just the way to interest them. And it basically was read like he just um copied and pasted from Wikipedia in the first place. So that was that. And then every issue he had to have the American flag placed somewhere within the art. And that was
Exactly.
so, with New 52 Superman, the he was a global hero.
Yeah, they just never talked about the whole flag thing or anything like that. So
Yeah,
yeah, you don't have to talk about it.
no, you don't. It was a even within this movie, it was a lot of telling. It was a lot of telling, but it wasn't enough showing.
Hmm.
It was telling of relationships. It was telling of motivations, but it was not truly showing it. The only one that actually showed his motivation was Lex Luthor being the biggest certified hater, of fiction. But other than that, everything was told to you, and then you had the mindless toilet jokes and, you know, that whole thing. And Crypto being a fluffy white demon. But
Yeah.
but as I said, any other time, and I do fear for Wonder Woman because, again,
Hmm.
she is the character that is supposed to represent celebrating culture and celebrating uniqueness. And I feel like because Gunn and having not Tomasi, but King in his ear and everything
Hmm.
is going to turn her patriotic, is going to turn her into this, just as they did with Superman, is that you have to be human American in order to be accepted. And it's
I
kind of
wouldn't be
like, again,
surprised, Britt, if King was the one that recommended to Gunn that they do the whole Kryptonians are evil thing.
I wouldn't be surprised either. And because he said that he had King as a consultant. If
Hmm.
you have, first of all, that was a big, gigantic red flag in the first place. And then for King not to like question that, it says a lot about him and how much he knows about the characters, truly knows about the characters.
Yeah,
And
all
then,
he cared about is that he has hypno glasses.
right. But what's so good though about the Supergirl movie and the Supergirl director is that he actually told Gunn no. They butted heads. Is I don't think it's truly confirmed, but it seemed like that is the one aspect that they butted heads on, and he was like, no, he's not going to turn them evil. And um the actor that's playing Kara's dad said that the House of L is the symbol of hope.
Which,
So
here's my concern on that, Britt. That Gunn will say, "Oh, Jor-El was the bad one."
exactly, but it's kind of like, then why would they all wear the crest? It's there's no way you can keep this going. So basically, what Gunn has to do, and especially if he's chronically online and seeing all of this, that at some point you have to address this and retcon it or something like that. One more thing that we didn't have on the slide, I totally forgot.
Hmm.
But what's so funny is how, like I said, going back with how Chloe's fans are acting like they are the end all be all, and just really being arrogant idiots online. But it's so funny that David Cornsweet said that he would love to interact with Diana. Um, and it's kind of like that's the first thing you think of, which is great. We want
I mean, at
um
least interact with her. It doesn't necessarily have to be date her. That would be a
exactly.
nice bonus. But how about we interact? Period.
Yeah, and being the best, all we want is for them to be best friends. Like the romance thing is not even, honestly, if they're going the post crisis route, Clark and Diana's relationship was so solid, and just them being best friends made you root for them to be a couple. And that's pretty much what we want. We want that. If it's to be slow burn, if it's to be some type of underlying attraction or something, or just the fact of shipping them because they are best friends and we know the history that they have. We want that. We don't want some half half-assed relationship like he's introduced with Chloe, where you are expected to have them together and that's it, that's all. And basically the so-called chemistry that the actors have, you just base it on that alone. It's not actually telling the story of them being together and the purpose of them being together. It's you know, just being so basic. You There's also another clip where um the interviewer asks, do they have a Rachel and David, do they have a Superman and or Lois in their life? And so David, he was so stuck. And then Rachel said, your wife is Lois. And David was like, my wife is not Lois. And
Mhm.
he said, he mentioned Diana. He was saying basically that his wife is Wonder Woman, but he said that he didn't know enough about Diana's character to just, solidify that, which I'm like, David, yes, say it. Yes, she is Wonder Woman. But so he said that she is the Superman. And I'm like, David, you could have just said Wonder Woman. But, and that he's the Lois, which in a sense, the way that he said he's the Lois in an aggravating way and in a way that is annoying, it's kind of like, you're not really selling this character the way you think you are.
Well, yeah, exactly. And then,
So,
yeah, but it's like that's the issue that I think this movie's going to run into is the international markets for all the reasons that we brought up here.
yeah, I mean, the the box office for China actually dropped 72%.
Oh, geez.
So, yeah, that's a lot. And, also the funny thing is how, like I said, Chloe's fans, they boast about, oh, women are going to see this movie. They love romance. They love Chloe and everything like that. But again, where are the women? Women were actually the lowest of percentages. Um, it
You
was
know why?
pretty
Because
much,
Corn Sweat doesn't take his shirt off in the movie.
well, yeah, but that is one thing, but also, I mean, Chloe's fans, they they say that if it is them together, regardless, women that Superman is basically a female, you know, um, has a strong female fan base.
Really?
So whether he has a shirt off or not, they expect women to be, in theaters or support. But again, women were like non-existent.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Oh, and Cameron says, I would have loved to. Yeah. Yeah, I know, right? Oh, God. That makes me think that what if he does push for Super Wonder? That would be hilarious if we end up getting that because of Corn Sweat. And then it's like, watch all the watch all the Clovis people immediately turn on him.
Oh, they already have.
Hmm.
He was actually they did on Twitter, of course. They were actually adding him, and it was one very known Chloe's fan. They called him Sextus. They brought up his daughter. Um, they harassed him, said that he needs to read comics. Yeah, they said a lot of colorful things to him, adding him and everything. So, yeah, but at the same time, again, they just want what they want and have this expectation, but that is not how these characters are supposed to be.
Yeah, exactly. It never ceases to amaze me. But anyway, I think that's a good place to leave it. So this was a fun episode, and yeah. So if you want to go see the Superman movie, more power to you, my friends. More power to you. But in terms of like any stories, and by the way, so this coming Saturday, our next episode will be comparing Wonder Woman, the way DC handles Wonder Woman, to the way that Marvel handles Carol Danvers, Captain Marvel. In other words, the other, so the Wonder Woman of Marvel, that Marvel as a whole hasn't written well, but Kelly Thompson has written well. Isn't that interesting?
Very the good irony.
That's the good irony right there. But so Britt, and yes, so we were gonna review Trinity this week, but we figured we're gonna do all the comic book reviewing this coming Saturday because Wonder Woman 23 comes out this Wednesday. So we're gonna do Absolute Superman, we're gonna do Trinity, and we're gonna do Wonder Woman. And yeah, we're gonna have to talk about Trinity. God dang. But so Britt, what stories you want to tease us with?
So, chapter 2 of Odyssey is complete, and I will be posting that in a few minutes. So yay, I finally finished that. Um, chapter 4 of Shelter will be a couple of weeks, but that is, almost complete. And then I have also Awakens. I'm finally finishing the final chapter of that and also the epilogue. That was a request that I got. I think I got like 5 requests or so, maybe more, to finish that. So I will,
And
finally.
what if I
Um,
told you guys that part of our Shelterverse, Britt and I are doing our version of Flashpoint?
yes, we are. Of course, we have to rewrite every DC story that ruins Diana, and give her more respect. Um, I But yeah, I also have just a few little one shots. There will be a two-parter that I'm thinking of that was inspired by another show that I watched recently that was really, really fun. So yeah, all of those will be uploaded and everything. And of course, Jared does get the exclusive, but those will be
I'm
uploaded
her
within the few
access
weeks.
media.
Right, right. And I did give Jared chapter 2 to read, and I did receive my 5,000 cat gifs.
Oh, trust me. And now I have to do something to give you 5,000 more. And NJ, tell DC because we would love to be the main writers for Wonder Woman. That would be
Oh, yeah.
dope as hell.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we would definitely respect Wonder Woman's lore. We talk a lot about Steve, but we would actually give him a little bit of respect by making him old, but he's very much vital to Diana's story. And that actually prompts me that I do have a few Wonder Woman threads that I will be posting on Twitter. And one of them is kind of like a story proposal for how just the basic background of Diana's purpose and the characters that are important to her and their purpose in her story and Diana's purpose within the story that I think will be the foundation for her. And it really does take a lot of inspiration from for Perez. But yeah, that is one of the threads that I will be posting.
Yeah, and Battlegoon. Here's the advantage of Wonder Woman. DC doesn't edit Wonder Woman that well. They don't like work well. They don't like actually check people. So as far as I know, Britt and I could straight up just have Trinity trip and fall and die, and they probably wouldn't even do anything.
Exactly.
I may have spoiled some ideas I have for our run. But and by the way, Cameron, I agree with you. More Brit threads. Brit is very smart. And I think the DC Cultural Hall needs to be uprooted to let one of them be taken care of. Oh, yeah, well, I agree with you on that one. But stay heroic, I would give her the Injustice Nightwing treatment. Stay heroic, everyone. Remember, Lois Lane is Lois Lane. She belongs to General Zod or Satan. Either of those works. Zois the Max the Bat for life. See you later. Bye-bye.